Welcome to all of you. In today's video, we will know about the five literary terms that are Celtic Revival, chivalric romance, chorus, chronicle plays, and comic relief. So let us start with first one, that is Celtic Revival. Celtic Revival is also known as the Irish Literary Renaissance. It identifies the remarkably creative period in Irish literature from about 1880 to the death of William Butler Yeats in 1939. The aim of Yeats and other early leaders of movement was to create a distinctive national literature by going back to Irish history, legend and folklore as well as to the native literary methods. The major writers, however, wrote not in the native Irish but in English, and under the influence of various non Irish literary forms, a number of them also turned increasingly for their subject matter to modern Irish life rather than to the ancient past. So, now let us next one is chivalric romance. Chivalric romance is also known as the medieval romance. So, it is a type of narrative that developed in 12th century France, spread to the literatures of other countries, and displaced the earlier epic and heroic forms. Romance originally signified a work written in French language which evolved from a dialect of Roman language Latin. Romances were at first written in verse but later in prose as well. The romance is distinguished from the epic in that it does not represent a heroic age of tribal wars but a courtly or chivalric age, often one of highly developed manners and civility. Its standard plot is that of a quest undertaken by a single knight in order to gain a lady's favor. Frequently, its central interest is courtly love, together with tournaments fought and dragons and monsters slain for the damsel's sake. It stresses the chivalric ideals of courage, loyalty, honor, mercifulness to an opponent, and elaborate manners, and it delights in wonders and marvels. Supernatural events in the epic had their causes in the will and actions of gods. Romance shifts the supernatural to this world and makes much of the mysterious effect of magic spells and enchantments. So, next term is chorus. So, among the ancient Greeks, the chorus was the group of people wearing masks who sang or chanted verses while performing dance like movements as religious festivals. A similar chorus played a part in Greek tragedies, where in the plays of Aeschylus and Sophocles, they served mainly as the commentators on the dramatic action and events who expressed traditional morals, religious, and social attitudes. Beginning with the Euripides, however, the chorus assumed primarily a lyrical function. The Greek ode, as developed by Pindar, was also chanted by a chorus, and in The Birth of Tragedy, published in 1872, the German classicist and philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche speculated that at the origin of Greek tragedy, the chorus, consisting of goat like satyrs, were the only figures of the stage. They were presented as attendants and witnesses of the suffering, death, and transformation of their master, the god Dionysus. Later, in Nietzsche's view, actors were introduced to enact the event that had originally been represented only symbolically, and the chorus was reduced to the role of commentator. Roman playwrights such as Seneca took over the chorus from the Greeks, and in the mid 16th century, some English dramatists imitated the Senecan chorus. The classical type of chorus was never widely adopted by English dramatist writers. John Milton, however, included a chorus in Samson Agonist, published in 1671, as did Shelley in Prometheus Unbound, published in 1820, and the Thomas Hardy in Diana's, published in 1904 to 8. More recently, T.S. Eliot also made effective use of the classical chorus in his religious tragedy Murder in the Cathedral, published in 1935. The use in drama of a chorus of singers and dancers survives also in operas and in musical comedies. During the Elizabethan age, the term chorus was applied also to a single person who, in some plays, spoke the prologue and epilogue and sometimes introduced each act as well. This character served as the author's vehicle for the things and the description of events happening off stage. So, modern scholars use the term choral character to refer to a person within the play itself who stands apart from the action and by his or her comments provide the audience with the special perspective uh, through which to view the other characters and events. So, choral character is sometimes applied also to one or more persons in a novel who represents the point of view of a community or a cultural group, and so provide norms by which to judge the other characters. And they do. Instances are Thomas Hardy's peasants and the old black woman in some of William Faulkner's novels. Now, next is chronicle plays. Chronicle plays were dramatic works based on the historical materials in the English chronicles by Raphael Holinshed and others. They achieved high popularity late in the 16th century when the patriotic fervor following the defeat of Spanish Armada was in 1888 fostered a demand for plays dealing with English history. The early chronicle plays presented a loosely knit series of events during the reign of an English king and depended for effort mainly on the bustle of the stage, battles, pageantry, and spectacles. Christopher Marlowe, however, in his Edward II, 1592, selected and rearranged materials from Holinshed's chronicles to compose a unified drama of character, and Shakespeare's series of chronicle plays encompassing the succession of English knights from Richard II to Henry VIII includes such major artistic achievements as Richard II 1, Henry IV, 2, Henry IV, and Henry V. Then the Elizabethan chronicle plays are sometimes called historical plays. This latter term, however, is often applied for more broadly to any drama based on mainly on historical material, such as Shakespeare's Romans plays Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra, and including such recent examples as Arthur Miller's The Crucible, published in 1953, which treats the Salem with the trials of 1692, and Robert Bolt's A Man for All Seasons, published in 1962, about the 16th century judge, author, and martyr Sir Thomas More. Now, next term is comic relief. So, comic relief is the introduction of comic characters, speeches, or scenes in a serious or tragic work, especially dramas. Such elements were almost universal in Elizabethan tragedy. Sometimes they occur merely as episodes of dialogue or horseplay for purposes of elevating tension and adding variety. In more carefully wrought plays, however, they are integrated with the plot in a way that counterpoints and enhances the serious or tragic significance. Examples of such complex uses of comic elements are Gravediggers in Hamlet, fifth act, scene 1, the scene of drunken porter after the murder of king in Macbeth, act 2, scene 3rd. So these are the examples. That's all for the today. Thanks a lot for watching this video. God bless us all. If video is liked by you, then share this video, subscribe the channel, and do comments. Thanks a lot once again for watching this video.